Shalom. I'm Yosef Kolner, and I am the Rabbi of Kehilat Beth Avinu. Beth Avinu is a Messianic synagogue located in Davie, Florida. Davie, Florida is a suburb of Fort Lauderdale, and Fort Lauderdale is just north of Miami. So this is our very, very first program, and we hope it won't be the last program. And so we decided at Kehilat Beth Avinu that we were going to establish a YouTube channel so that we were able to inform you and teach you, and help you grow spiritually, so that you can understand the inner dimensions of the Torah, or the Torah, the Tanakh, which is commonly called the Hebrew Scriptures, the entire Hebrew Scriptures, and how they all relate to the Brit Chadashah, or the New Testament, which, from our point of view, are just one book with many authors, and the chief author being, the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, and his Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, commonly known in English as Jesus the Messiah. There are lots of teachers on the internet. There are a lot of video channels where people try to inform you of what they believe the Scriptures say. One of the problems for me is that just because you are trying to teach the Bible, and this may sound a little arrogant, it doesn't mean that you're qualified to teach the Bible. So, for example, if I have an illness, I could go to my friends and I could get their advice on how I can receive healing, or what medicine or vitamins I could or should take, and what the possible effects or benefits are going to be. But I prefer to go to my physician, who has been trained rigorously and academically and passed the test, because she's qualified. So many people give unqualified opinions. Now you could see that I'm probably being pretty straightforward, and I kind of have that brusque Israeli attitude, and that's because that's what I am. Though I wasn't born in Israel, lived in Israel. And just to let you know a little bit about me, before we moved to Israel, I was born in Chicago, and if you asked my parents what type of home we had, they would say Orthodox. We had a strong influence of my bubby, or my grandmother, who came from Belarus, and she actually came from a town called Skidel, which is outside of Białystok, which is part of Poland. So, pretty typical upper-class Jewish background, traditional synagogue, Orthodox-style synagogue that I went to. And as a lot of Jewish kids do, after my bar mitzvah, tended to drift away. In the process of time, when I was at Illinois State University, where I earned a bachelor's degree in Spanish and Latin American studies, I had an experience similar to Saul of Tarsus, where God spoke to me about the messiahship of Yeshua, and through a process of time, I eventually became a believer. I have a master's degree from Gratz College. Gratz College is a leading Jewish educational institute of higher learning. So I have a master's degree in Jewish studies, and I guess I would have to be a little proud to say that I graduated with high honors. During the time that we lived in Israel, my wife and I, we went to Ulpan Aleph, which is a 6-month, 4-day, 4.5 day a week course where new immigrants learn the Hebrew language. We started with about 30 students, ended with about 10. And then at the end of the course, you could get a certificate that says that you took the course, or you could take a test, known a mivchan, and then you are graded according to the level of the mastery of Hebrew. So I have a certificate from the state of Israel saying that I took the test in Hebrew, and I got a significantly high grade. Also at that same time, I studied at an Orthodox yeshiva in the city of Tzfat. So I would like to humbly suggest that I might have a few qualifications for being able to understand the scriptures in Hebrew from a Jewish understanding. And I'm going to, today, I would like to speak to you about the holiday of Purim or Purim. And even though I'm going to I don't want to date the video, it just happens to be that we just celebrated Purim last week, and this happens to be the year of 2015. And Purim this year has much historical and prophetic significance. And so I wanted to examine the patterns of the holiday of Purim. And the holiday of Purim, or the story of Purim, is found in the book of Esther, or normally called Megillat Esther, which means basically the scroll of Esther. It's a loose translation, because during the holiday of Purim, we take out a scroll known as the Megillah, and we read the entire story of the book of Esther, and it's to remind us of the story of the attack of the Amalekites upon the Jewish people during the period of time known as the going out from Egypt, Yetziat Mitzrayim, the place of Egypt. And so this historical incident, in a way, is reenacted or portrayed in the book of Esther. So when I say Purim patterns, what I mean is that in the entire story, which is, I believe, is historical, we have recurring, interwoven biblical patterns. Patterns that we see from the very beginning of the first book of the Bible, known as Bereshit, or in the beginning. So I would like to today unfold to you, Bezrat Hashem, with God's help, what these biblical patterns are. Now, the first thing that I wanted to say is that the celebration of Purim, or again, the story that's found in the book of Esther, one of the most significant messages of Purim is that it is a celebration or an observation or a holiday of inclusiveness. And what do I mean by inclusiveness? What that means is that at the end of the book of Esther, it says that this, I'm going to stick with the term holiday, is not only for the Jewish people, but this holiday is for every person who feels a connection or has connected themselves to the Jewish community. So it's an inclusive holiday. It's not just for my Jewish people, but it is for everyone. And God's message to the world is inclusive. It's not exclusive. Remember, as the New Testament says, concerning the concept of inclusiveness, there's no Jew, though physically we are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's not non-Jews. There's not slaves. There's not free people. There's not men. There's not women, because God is not prejudicial. He's not a respecter of persons. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God judges the heart. We're all God's children. We're all sons of the living God. And we all become Abraham's seed through the promised Messiah, Yeshua. So you might say to yourself, and people say, well, why is this holiday important to me? Why is it important? Because if you consider yourself a child of Abraham, then you are connected to the Jewish people, and this is a holiday for you. Now, the first real pattern that I'd like to point out is it's the pattern of history. Now, all throughout history as we know it, and in particular biblical history, every major nation has tried to destroy us as Jewish people. Not only as a nation, but to kill us physically and spiritually. We know that the first major attempt by a major nation we see in the book of Shemot or in the book of Exodus, where there was a Pharaoh who didn't know Yosef, and he felt or sensed that the people of Israel were a threat, an existential threat to him and the nation of Egypt. And so, of course, we know that he tried to destroy all males, Jewish males. And we all remember the story of Moshe and his parents and how they hid him in the Nile River, and the daughter of Pharaoh adopted Moshe. And that though there was an order to destroy the male children, the handmaids or the midwives did not destroy the male children. Pharaoh enslaved us. We all basically know the story of Exodus, which we rehearse and repeat at Pesach time, which is coming in a short period of time, at Pesach. And then we see the Babylonians. We're going to look at the story of Esther of the Persians. Then we see that the Greeks, part of the story of Hanukkah, is that the king of the Greeks wanted our Jewish people to adopt Hellenistic culture and to no longer worship the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then we see the Romans, who destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, and then again in 130, and renamed the city of Jerusalem Eliatola Capitolonia. We see the Church Council of Nicaea in 325. We see the Crusades. We see the Spanish expulsion from Spain. We see the ill treatment of our Jewish people in England by France, major civilizations. Of course, in recent memory, we see the horrors of the Holocaust. And, of course, now we're starting to see this kind of anti-Jewish Semitic feeling that's becoming more and more evident in the United States. Every nation that has tried to destroy us, they themselves have gone from prominence to insignificance. And some of those nations don't even exist. So in the book of Esther, we see this historical pattern of, once again, a powerful king over a powerful nation gives permission to one of the officials of his government to destroy the Jewish people. And it's interesting to note that in this year, that the Rosh Memshalah, or the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, he addressed the United States Congress on the eve of Purim, warning that here we see once again, we need to learn the lessons from history, that the Persian Empire, the Iranians, are trying to destroy the Jewish people. When you live in Israel, unlike in America, we have enemies that face us on every side. And we know that the Iranians are involved with the Syrian front, the front from Lebanon, and from Gaza. And so recently, in my most recent trip, I was visiting my cousins in Kfar Giladi, and I believe it was a Sunday. And 3 weeks previous to that, the Israeli army struck a convoy in Syria, and just so happened, which the Israeli intelligence knew, that there was an Iranian general that was in that convoy. And so he was destroyed, and so was the convoy. And just as I was approaching Kfar Giladi that day, I could hear in the distance boom, or boomim, or boomim. I still have an accent when I speak Hebrew. And I thought maybe it was construction. And then as I was going through the town of Kiryat Shmona, headed towards Kfar Giladi, which is between Kiryat Shmona and Metula, the very northern border with Lebanon, I noticed these emergency vehicles racing towards the border. And I just didn't know what was happening. So I pulled into the parking lot of Kfar Giladi, went to my cousin's apartment, and right on television, there had just been a missile strike 5 kilometers away from where I was in retaliation for Israel's missile strike. And unfortunately, some of our soldiers from the IDF and their vehicles were destroyed. And I don't think that in America we have had a domestic war since the Civil War. So feeling the pressure of enemies, imagine having enemies shooting missiles at you from Canada and Mexico. Well, the United States would do something about that. And one summer when we were living in Israel, was the summer of 2006, I believe. It was 2006. It might have been 2007. There was an incident on the Lebanese border, and all of a sudden, there was a missile war. Milchama Shniya im Hezbollah, or the second war with Hezbollah from Lebanon. And so every day the air raid sirens would go off, and we would get into our safe room in our home. And that's just the way that it is. There was a very real threat by the Iranians to just attack. And in the Middle East, people's tempers are very explosive, and you never know what's going to happen. That's why you have to trust in the Lord. And so when Netanyahu, on the eve of Purim, he began to tell the United States Congress the realities of what it was to be surrounded on all sides by your enemies, and that history is once again repeating itself. I think it was always interesting, and that one of the things that he said at the end of his speech, which is one of the messages of Purim, is that if nobody comes to defend Israel, Israel will defend itself with God's help.